Hi, it's Robin Sharma, author of The Leader Who Had No Title, founder of the Titan Academy. Welcome to this mastery session. This mastery session is all about how change makers generate confidence. I don't know if you'd agree with me on this, but in many ways, one of the key factors to legendary success isn't your natural ability. It's not whether you have the right product. It's not whether you're in the right field. It's not whether you've had a blessed background. It's not whether you have the right IQ. I want you to really think about and deconstruct and play with, maybe later tonight in your journal. I want you to deconstruct this idea of confidence. And it seems like a very simple word, but just think about it in your own life. When you have confidence, or we could even call it fire, when you have that fire within you, that confidence, that interior bravery, you almost have this power to do whatever it takes to get your brave vision done. You see, in this world, it's not about, in many ways, your strategy in your business or your ability in your life. It's about this thing called confidence. And we have all had these times in our lives when we are full of confidence. And what other people see as a problem, we simply do see as an opportunity. Other people see it as a stumbling block or a wall, and we see it as a stepping stone or this solution. And so confidence is something that you really want to wire in. Confidence is something you really want to develop. Confidence is a practice. Confidence is a muscle. And like any muscle, the more you focus on it and practice it and train it, the stronger your confidence is going to grow. And I just have to say it again. When you are at a place in your life when there is an ongoing, steady stream of confidence moving through your mindset, moving through your heart set, you do the heroic in your business and you achieve the remarkable in your life. And so the first thing I want to offer to you with deep respect as always is simply this. Study the alchemy. That's really the first lesson in generating rare levels of confidence. Study the alchemy. Now here's what I mean by that. What happens to most people in life, especially the victims, is they reach a part of their life, a difficult time, and they call it failure. I mean, even just labeling a setback as a failure triggers something into your mindset to release cortisol, the fear hormone, which blocks your best performance. And so you want to see yourself and you want to study the alchemy, which is where other people are seeing a failure or a setback or even a little problem, you want to look for the gold. You want to train your brain so you have a dominant belief. It just becomes automatic because you've practiced it so much, where when someone says there's a problem or there's a wall or there's a failure, you literally see the alchemy to turn the lead into gold. Maybe you're going through a divorce. Maybe you're going through an illness. A lot of people who watch this podcast are going through difficulties or outright tragedies. But you want to practice seeing the setback or the dark time as fuel to leverage your growth. And so on this first point about study the alchemy, no matter what you're going through in your life, whether it's a large difficulty or a small setback, you want to ask yourself, how can I use what I'm going through as fuel for my growth? You want to ask yourself, what is the gorgeous opportunity hidden inside this so-called problem? I mean, and if you look at the mass of humanity, they really train their brains to focus on problems, right? They hit a wall and they just, because of their belief system, they don't know it because most people are not really that aware of their belief systems. So they blame it on the world. They blame it on the supplier. They blame it on the teammate. They blame it on their husband or wife. They blame it on their childhood versus understanding our daily performance reflects our deepest beliefs. And so if you are experiencing some kind of a setback, whether it's large or tiny, you want to train your brain to see the treasure within the lead. Which brings me to the second way that change makers generate confidence. They flow with the seasons. I mean, our egos and our weaker selves, and maybe I'm getting a little philosophical here, but I think we're all philosophers at some level. And our weaker selves think that success in life is being happy, happy, happy. always being in the sunshine, always being successful. And society has sold us a bill of goods that if we're not successful and we're not on our games and if we're not waking up happy and if we're not full of joy and if we're not feeling all this confidence, there is something that is wrong. And with deep love and respect, this could be one of the most important things I share with you in this podcast. That is just your ego screaming. And that's why I say flow with the seasons. A life beautifully lived is a series of seasons. A legendary producer is not always at the top of the mountain. And so stop resisting. I encourage you, stop resisting the natural flow of epic performance. Stop resisting the natural seasons of life. You see? And so what happens is when you stop struggling and you learn, again, it's a muscle, but you just learn to relax with life. And you simply understand part of living a legendary business life and part of living a rare air personal life means you're going to have seasons of so-called success in society. Maybe it's making a lot of money, being really productive, being at the top of your game, receiving the accolades of peers, feeling you are nailing your goals and your ambitions and your KPIs, your key performance indicators. And you're going to have seasons where you're confused, seasons where you feel heartbroken, seasons where you feel depleted, seasons where you are struggling. And the more you learn to relax into every season, the more you will generate this internal power, which I call confidence. The third method that change makers use to generate great levels of confidence, they bulletproof their TBTF, tight bubble of total focus. In previous podcasts, I've encouraged you to build a tight bubble of total focus around yourself in this age of dramatic distraction. You can be distracted, you can do iconic work, you just don't get to do both. And so the most productive people on the planet and the people with the greatest impact in the world, they all have this metaphorical tight bubble of total focus that they build around their mindsets, their heart sets, and their work routines. And so to generate massive amounts of confidence, you almost have to bulletproof yourself so nothing toxic, nothing distracting, no interruptions can get in. And then what happens is you literally start to drop into transient hypofrontality. That's the neurobiological phenomenon that happens when you drop into solitude and you get out of distraction. And you get into this monomaniacal focus where you slow down the cortisol flow, which is the fear hormone, and you increase serotonin, and you increase dopamine, which is the inspirational neurotransmitter, and your prefrontal cortex, which is the seat of reasoning, and that chattering mind that goes on all day, actually gets silent for a brief burst of time. And that's why they call it transient hypofrontality. For a short period of your time, your prefrontal cortex becomes really, really quiet. And that drops your brain from beta waves to alpha waves. And researchers like Mihai Csikszentmihalyi call this the flow state. When you are playing basketball and you're really in the moment, in the flow of life, hours go by in minutes. And all of a sudden you find these superhuman abilities. Maybe you're at work and you're just jamming on a project with your teammates and you're actually having fun. Well, again, the whole day goes by and you did your best work. That's flow. And how do you get to flow? By protecting and bulletproofing your mindset, your heart set, and you doing your best work. Another way to bulletproof your mindset and create this tight bubble of total focus is really understanding the importance of reading great autobiographies, listening to great podcasts, turning off the news, because the purpose of the news is to frighten you. The news is actually not objective in terms of the way the world is. Reality is so much better. It's so much more positive. There are heroes on the planet. There are so many kind people out there. There are so many people building remarkably awesome businesses. There are so many people scaling great nonprofits. There are so many people out there in your own community living these great lives in their own unique way. But the news doesn't report that. It's one negative story after another because the purpose of the news is to frighten you. And if they frighten you, they're going to addict you. So again, one way to really generate great confidence is to build this tight bubble of total focus around you. And another way to do that is to clean out the toxicity in your life, stop watching news, start reading great autobiographies so you understand, you will have your Robin Island moment or season or year or maybe even a decade. I mean, Nelson Mandela, I was fortunate enough to be in his prison cell last month. And I learned he was on Robin Island for 18 years. His total period of confinement was 27 years. And again, he could have seen that as failure. He used it as fuel. The fourth way to generate confidence is to understand that the brain has a natural negativity bias. And I've alluded to this and spoken about this on previous podcasts, but this ancient brain, the amygdala, it served us really well. It was a survival mechanism that was developed within the human brain hundreds and thousands of years ago. So we were out on the savannah and we had to fight. We had to be hyper vigilant to saber-toothed tigers, to starvation, to being killed, right? And now we are in modern society, but we still have this ancient brain, this negativity bias. And what I'm suggesting to you, and I know you know this, but how many times in your own life you have a great day, you focus on the tiny losses. You have a great life, your brain naturally goes to the things that are not right. You give a great presentation to 100 people and you focus on one negative comment. With your intimate partner, he or she has 1,000 incredible qualities and you focus on the 3 negative qualities. Why does that happen? It's because your brain has a natural bias towards negativity, the negativity bias. And again, tonight, pull out your journal and write about the negativity bias and how that's depleting you and how that's limiting you. And on this fourth point about how change makers generate great confidence, you want to recode your mindset to fight and then beat and then transcend your brain's natural negativity bias. And how do you do that? You simply focus on where you are winning. Rather than saying what needs to improve, you can ask yourself this great question and journal about it. You can do a 30-day journaling challenge where you start to ask yourself, where am I winning in my life? And you do that every day. You start to rewire your neurobiology and your interior psychology. You can ask yourself before you go to sleep every night. I call this the nightly 3. It's one of the rituals I teach at my events like the Titan Summit. And every night before you go to sleep, you can do this while you're laying in bed, just mentally, or you can write it down. You can keep your journal by your bedside table. It's a ritual you can install. Ask yourself, what are 3 good things that happened to me today? And wherever possible, let's say you do a nature walk, let's say you're commuting home from the office, you start to build these rituals where you train your brain, because the brain is a muscle. And you start to ask yourself, where am I winning? What was good today? What am I grateful for in my life? Here's another great question. How could this be worse? I live in Canada. And there's an iconic rock group. They're almost like Canada's national rock group. And they're called the Tragically Hip. And they have been famous for decades. And they do beautiful, beautiful music, And I mean, their music has got me through great times and their music has got me through painful times. And I just think in many ways their music is genius. And the front man, his name is Gord Downie. And a lot of people describe the way he moved, He moved like he was on a trance, and he was a poet, and he was a great front. He was definitely one of the greatest frontmen in the history of rock music. And, I don't say that lightly, but if you watch some of their videos, you'll know what I mean. And my loved ones and I were very blessed and privileged to be at their last show, which was a few weeks ago in their hometown of Kingston, Canada. And it was just a unforgettable night. The music was just so magical, you know, and the Prime Minister was in the room and people honored him and they celebrated him. But this concert was very sad because it was actually the last show they will ever do. Gord Downie, the frontman of the Tragically Hip, has been diagnosed with terminal brain cancer. And so this summer they did a final tour, 10 shows. And I think of him often, you know, after that show, because so many of us have so many blessings in our lives that we take for granted. And positive psychologists call it hedonic adaptation. You know, we get something good in our life. Maybe it's a great relationship. Maybe it's a promotion. Maybe it's a new car. Maybe you're blessed to be healthy. And hedonic adaptation is the very natural psychological tendency for us to dismiss and take for granted what we experience every day. And I think of Gord Downie, you know, I think of his family. I think of what he must be experiencing. You know, if it's indeed true that these are his last days and that was his last show, and what he must be dealing with. You know, and when I watched him on the stage, you know, bringing on his A game, you know, with his bandmates, and they've gone through so many shows around the world together. And here he was, you know, I mean, he's reportedly going through intense chemotherapy, and yet he was just singing with such heart, you know. And one of the lines he said when he talked to the audience, he said, "Thank you for pushing me. You know, thank you for pushing me." And I'm simply reminding you with great respect, you know, focus on where you're winning. Focus on where you're grateful for. Rewire and recode that natural tendency of your brain towards negativity bias. Because, you know, we live in a world where half the world lives on $2.50 a day. You know, it's that Persian proverb, I cursed the fact I had no shoes until I saw the man who had no feet. And then the final way the change makers generate confidence is they stop comparing. And this may seem obvious, but I'm going to invite you to really think about how many times, even in a single day, you compare your success to competition. You compare your life to what it looks like your neighbors have. You compare where you are on the journey of your life to what society says other people are living and what the majority defines success as. And, you know, I'm encouraging you, when you stay in your lane, there is no competition. And one of the great recipes for a life lived unhappily is to spend your best hours of your best days comparing yourself. Oh, this person has a nicer car. Oh, this person has a nicer family. Oh, this person has a beautiful home. They must have it all together. Well, here's the reality. Almost every single one of us alive today, we're struggling. We're struggling with something. We're struggling with a job issue, a financial issue, a health issue, a relationship issue, a spiritual issue. You know, all these people that you see on the street that are wearing happy faces designed to suggest they have massive confidence, they're just like all of us. We're all just trying to figure it out. We all have something we want to work on in our lives. There's all some weakness we can pivot on and make better. That's the human journey. And so my encouragement to you here today on this podcast, where I share from my heart as much passion and love and wisdom and leadership insight as I can bring on for you. Stop comparing your life, because you know what? Everyone has something that they're working on. And the people you think, I mean, I've worked with billionaires and I get an inside private glimpse of how they live every single day, of their psychology, of their emotionality, of the struggles that they have within their family. Many of them are self-medicating themselves. You think they have a beautiful life, they are struggling with just getting through the day. And it is such an illusion that so many of the people that we think have everything, many of them have nothing. And so please stop comparing your income, your car, your social status, your house, your family life, whatever it is, you know, your business with other businesses in your field with others. Stay in your own lane, run your own race. Have the wisdom, bravery, and confidence to say, here's what success stands for me. It might not be society's measure of success. It might not even be my neighbor's measure of success. It might not be my mom or my dad or even my loved one's measure of success. But this is what instinct feels right to me. And this is how I define success in my life, according to my values, and in the world. And then just don't compare to anyone else. Live that. I hope this podcast has been of value to you. I hope it's given you some great ideas to dial in on your confidence. And remember, ideation without execution is delusion. I want you to start acting. Confidence really is a muscle. Start acting on these ideas, even tiny incremental improvements and execution ability today will build this momentum over time, right? Small daily improvements over time will lead to stunning results. So make those improvements today, right? So tomorrow is an even better day. I'll talk to you in the next mastery session. Thank you so much for being with me. Hi, this is Robin Sharma. I hope you received great value from this mastery session. If you'd like to receive potent training videos, blog posts, learning tools, and information on my 2 live events, Personal Mastery Academy and my flagship 4-day experience, the Titan Summit, go ahead and visit robinsharma.com.